everyone. I'm George from Ireland, and behind me is the house where Emily Davies lived from 1861 till I think the late 1870s. So she's best known for founding Girton College, which is now part of Cambridge University, and she was a feminist in every sense, for being a tireless campaigner for female suffrage. So Emily Davies was born in Southampton in 1830. Her father was a clergyman on the evangelical wing of the Church of England, a very learned chap, and he believed in the education of women. When Davies was a toddler, they moved to Newcastle. She had several siblings, including the brother Llewellyn, and they had distant Welsh ancestry. So her father was a rector in Newcastle. I don't quite understand it. If you're an Anglican priest in charge of a parish, sometimes the title is vicar, sometimes the title is rector, sometimes it's priest in charge. Don't ask me what the difference is. Anyway, so she went to school, obviously, did very, very well at school, and was frustrated that higher education wasn't open to women, and girls seldom went on to secondary school. A lot of boys didn't go to secondary school. Remember, it wasn't until 1870 that there was compulsory schooling in this country, and publicly funded schooling, because if you didn't have money, there was very little education available. Church groups used to offer it, charity sometimes, and it might be a school that was very under-resourced. So she thought it was ridiculous that women couldn't access this. People said that women were less intelligent. She said that, well, they're not. They're just denied these opportunities. So she wanted to level the playing field. And anyway, she was very close to her mother. Her father died in 1861, and Mary Davies, then 31, moved with her mother down here. No, sorry, they're still then 30 actually. Moved the mother here and lived here. Her brother Llewellyn had helped to choose the place. So they're very well off, as you can tell, because here we are in Maida Vale, or possibly St John's Wood. It's hard to tell where we are really out of those two districts. We're just north of Regent's Canal. Anyway, so she was a bibliomane, and she met a lot of other prominent women who were campaigning for the right to vote for women and higher education of women and things like that. So she knew Mary Frances Buss, Miss Beauchamp, other prominent women at the time. Anyway, and she started this London Schoolmistress Association, as in for women who are teaching here, and tried to make sure that there was some coordination between the schools, because up until this time each school did its own thing. But the London School Board was set up, and then there were some public exams for secondary schools, and that was a very new thing, because until then every school did its own thing, set its own tests, and there was no such idea of GCSE or A-level and everybody working towards the same curriculum. But anyway, so some of these school boards wouldn't allow girls to be entered for these exams. Only boys were allowed to sit the exams. So she said that's wrong. Girls should be allowed to enter for these exams as well. And eventually she won that right. So she was part of the Kensington Society earlier. That was based in an area of London called Kensington, where various women said that they would campaign for social reforms. Now, some of them, they were wives or relatives of politicians or other men of consequence. But if the women didn't have much right in their own right. Remember, a man and his wife were one flesh, and in property she couldn't own women property separately if she was married, and on and on. So eventually she founded Girton College, which they set up in Hertfordshire. It takes its name from the small town of Girton, where it was established, and that was for women to actually live in, and they were of university age and be taught. There was already Bedford College here in London on Bedford Square, so that was the first university for women in the United Kingdom. Eventually it was allowed to award degrees via the University of London, because a college cannot award degrees, only a university can award degrees. And then Girton College moved from Girton to just outside Cambridge, but retained the name Girton, and she was the head of Girton College for some time. So she wanted Cambridge University to allow her undergraduates to sit their exams. The tripos, Cambridge University refused. But she's nevertheless found out what the curriculum was, and she taught her undergraduates towards this in lots of subjects. Obviously she got women and sometimes men who were more capable than her in subjects where she wasn't so strong. She had considered studying medicine, and she was a good friend of Elizabeth Garrett Anderson, the first woman in the United Kingdom to qualify as a doctor. And eventually, in the end, Emily Davies never did that. She never married. I'm not quite sure why. Is it because she wanted to completely devote herself to education, or perhaps she never met the right male? Anyway, so she's finally, in the 1870s, Girton was made fully part of the Cambridge University. However, these undergraduates were allowed to go to all the tutorials and lectures and sit all the exams, but they weren't awarded a degree. They would get some letter from the university saying they'd fulfilled all the requirements of getting a degree, except for the small fact of being born male. There's only in, I think, 1949 that Cambridge University said, all right then, you will all actually award you a degree. Oxford University was a similar situation, but it was in 1920 when Oxford University rectified that. And that is just a little bit about Emily Davies, who lived on till 1921, and she wanted the right of women to vote. She befriended John Stuart Mill, the Liberal MP, who was the second person ever in Parliament to advocate for it. Incidentally, this Emily Davies is not to mix up with Emily Wilding Davies, the suffragette who famously was killed by the King's horse at the Epsom race, the Derby at Epsom in about 1912. No relation, even though Emily Wilding Davies was, well, I think she was an Oxford graduate, not a Canterbridgian, and she was also a suffragette, obviously. Well, that's enough from me. Toodle pip.